Hi, this is Hank Field, and in this video I'm going to show you some of the basics of using Git on Windows and on OS X. So the first thing that we need to do is to open up a terminal. So I'm going to show you that on both systems. So on Mac OS, we're just going to hit Command Spacebar and type in terminal. And I have this open in another window, so I'm just going to hit Command N to open up a new screen here. The very first command I want to do is a command you have to do once, and you never have to do it again on a particular system unless your Git installation gets wiped out. So what we need to do, I have a slide here for it, is we need to set our email and our name. And these two pieces of information are going to be attached anytime you make a change to a repository. And that may not seem like a big deal initially, but once you start working on repositories with lots of other people, this is going to be a way to keep track of who's done what to the repository. So these are the two commands we need. So we will do get config -- global user.email, and I'll put in my email address. And then get config global user.name. And there we go. On Windows, it will look the same. I'm running a virtual machine here, so I don't have to swap out two different computers. That's not the one I want. To open up the terminal here, what you're going to do is go down to your Windows button at the bottom, and I can see get bash right up here because I recently added it. You could also just help search for it. So get bash, it'll pop up. Okay, so we're going to do the exact same thing. So get config global user.email, and then whatever your email address is. Get config global user.name and whatever your name is. Okay, good. So we're set there. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to show you just some of the basic commands. So get init, which is the way of initializing a brand new repository. Get status, which will keep track of, it'll help you figure out what changes have been made or which files you have that you haven't actually made part of the repository. And then a couple other commands. We'll get to those in a minute. So let's start with this get init command. So the first thing we need to do is to create a folder. So let me do this the traditional way. I'm going to do it with Finder. So let me go onto my desktop, and I'm just going to right click here and say new folder, and I'm going to create a folder called my repo. And I'm going to double click on that, and to start with, I've got nothing in it. If you have a folder that has stuff in it, that's okay, you can do that. I'll show you in a minute how you can add files to your repository. From the command line, what I'm going to do is I need to change my directory into that. So I'm going to use the Unix command cd, and I put this on my desktop inside of my repo. Okay. So right now this is just a regular folder on our desktop. So I want to convert it into a Git repository. And the way you do that is by doing git init and then just hit enter. And you'll get this little message here that says that it initialized an empty Git repository, meaning you have nothing, no actual data associated with the repository yet. And that'll be true even if you have other files and folders inside of that, the folder that you're creating the repository in. One thing you saw pop up over here is I turned on hidden files, and you can do this with Command-Shift dot if you're on OS X. And I just wanted to show you that when you create a Git repository, when you initialize it, you'll see a hidden file .git that has a whole bunch of folders inside of it and some other files. This is how Git keeps track of everything inside of your repository. On the command line, you can do this by doing ls space -a. And that'll show you that. This ds store is just a Mac OS thing, so you can ignore that. Okay, so let's go over to Windows and I'll show you how to do the exact same thing. So I'll open up a folder. I'll go to my desktop and I'm just gonna right click and say new folder. And we'll call this my repo. You can name your folder whatever you want. I'm just doing my repo as an example. And if I double click in there, I see nothing, which is fine. And I'll change my command line directory to that. So cd desktop / my repo. Okay, so I'm going to do git init. I got the same message. Here, if you're on Windows and you want to see hidden files, you can do view and then hidden items. That'll show that to you, and you'll see the same thing we saw over on OS X. And on the command line, same thing. So if I do ls, I see nothing. If I do ls space -a, I'll see the .git folder. Okay, so that's great. So that's initializing a new repository. You only have to do this once for each repository. So and only when you want to create a new one. We're going to look at something else called cloning, which is when you want to copy an existing repository from somewhere else over to your computer. And in that case, you don't need to initialize either because the repository already exists. But here we're starting a brand new repository that doesn't exist anywhere. And that's the only time we have to run git init, and we'll never run it again for that repository. Okay, so let's add in a file. And so what I'm going to do is I have Sublime Text installed, and that's my preferred editor. You can use any kind of text editor you want, but I'm going to open this. And I actually already have this open for this folder, but if you go up here and you say open folder, you can select the repository that you've created. And so inside of here, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to save this as readme.md. MD is a special type of text format called Markdown. It's still plain text, but it will get interpreted by certain by various things. Like GitHub, for instance, has a Markdown parser, and it'll actually display your README when you load your repository. When you upload it to GitHub, it'll display it in kind of a nicely formatted way. So you'll see that quite often. It doesn't have to be in Markdown format, though. You could just make it README without an extension, or you can make it readme.txt. But this will be the kind of table of contents for our repository. And it just helps anyone who's looking at your repository, including yourself, figure out what's going on in it. It's a very good thing to add. Okay, so we'll just put in a little hello. This pound sign at the top is marked down for, you put that at the beginning of any title lines. So I want hello to show up really big at the top, so I put 1 pound sign. If you did 2 pound signs, you'd get a slightly smaller title. So what I want to do is this repository that we're making, let's say that we're going to put in some C++ programs to do a little bit of data analysis. So I'm going to just describe that. So my repo is a collection of C++ programs for processing data files. Okay, we'll save that. Okay, so that brings me to our next command. So I've saved this. It's in my repository, or in my repository folder. It's not actually part of the repository yet. If I do ls, I can see I've got readme.md there. Let me go back over to our commands. The next command we have here is get status. I want to show you what that does. Okay, so get status has a bunch of information. It tells you what branch you're on. Don't worry about branches quite yet. By default, you'll always be on the master branch. It tells you whether you have, how many commits you have, or which commit you're on. It'll tell you any things that you have staged for committing, which we don't have any right now, so you can't actually see anything about that quite yet, but we'll see it in a minute. And the other thing it'll show you are untracked files. So these are files that have not actually been added yet, and it tells you right here, use git add and then the name of the file to include that file when you go to commit. So we want to add readme.md. So we're going to do git add readme.md. Now on Windows, I get this warning, CRLF will be replaced by LF in README. So this is, CR is for character return, LF is for line feed. And in one of my earlier videos, I'd mentioned that on Windows, the typical line ending that you get at the end of every line in a text file is this character return followed by a line feed, whereas in most of the Unix world, and that includes Mac OS, they just use a line feed. Okay, so you won't get that message elsewhere. Now if I do get status, we will see that we have still no commits, and it says changes to be committed. And we added this new file. And we don't see anything that's untracked anymore, so that's good. Okay, so that's git add. And you can add as many files as you want at the same time, or you can do them individually. You can also add folders. So if you wanted to add a folder, you could just put the folder name in there. Everything that you add, though, has to be in the same directory as the git the folder where you did the init, or it has to be in a subfolder. Okay, so let's go ahead and do git commit, and I'll show you how that runs. So git commit is where you actually say, I'd like to make a checkpoint at this point. So I've added my readme.md. I've said this is a file I'd like to keep track of. Now I'm going to actually save it where it is. So if I ever want to go back to the exact state that all of my tracked files are in at this particular moment in time, I can do that. So I'm going to do that by doing git commit. And I'm going to do two extra things here. I'm going to do -a and then m. The -a says that if there's any changes to files that I currently have that are tracked, even if I haven't actually added them, I want to include those. The M says that I'm going to provide a message for the log. So just a short little message that explains what it is that I've done. So I'm going to say, I've added a README. All right. If everything succeeded, it will tell me that it did it correctly, and you shouldn't see any errors. Now if I do get status, you'll see it says that there's nothing to commit, and the working tree is clean. So that's these three here. Finally, I'll look at get log. Get log is a way of looking back through time at your previous commits. So I only have one commit so far, so I can see exactly when that commit took place. I can see the commit ID, and I can see the message that was made. And if I had 10 commits in the past, 10 different checkpoints, I would see each of them in turn. All right, so that's that. I'm going to go over and do this exact same thing on Mac just so you can see the similarities. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay, so let me open up Sublime Text. And I'm just going to say file open. Oh, I'm already in it. Desktop, my repo. Perfect. And let's add our README. My repo is a collection of C++ programs for processing data files. Okay, so now if I go to my terminal and I do git status, we will see readme.md is there. I have to add it now, git add readme. And now if I do git status, it tells me I have a new file, and now I can do git commit am add it readme. Now if I do git status, it'll tell me that there's nothing to commit. I can add in additional files, and I can make changes to existing files. So let me show you that real quick, and then I'll wrap it up for this video. So let's do two things. So I'm going to make a listing here of files. We're going to add one new file here in my README. So we're going to add one called sum.cbp, and this is going to sums a column in a specified data file. So this will, if you have a kind of a worksheet looking file that has a bunch of columns and you want to sum up everything that's in the second, all the numbers in the second column, this program will do it. Now, I haven't made this yet, so let's go ahead and make that file here. So we'll say new file, and we'll save it as sum.cbp, and I'll just put in typical header for C++. I'm going to do command line arguments for this, so I'll add those in. And I won't actually add in any of the real stuff. I'll just say get from read in data file name and column to sum. And then we will read through data file summing values in given column. And we will print out the answer. Okay, so we just have some pseudocode there. Okay, so let's go back into our terminal. I'm going to do get status, and think about what you think might happen here. What files have changed, what files aren't tracked yet. So if I do get status, we'll see that changes not staged for commit. So this includes all changes to files that are being tracked. So we've modified readme.md, but we haven't actually added those changes to the repository yet. And we have one new untracked file, sum.cbp. And this we have to add before we can commit. So I have a choice. I could either do get add, and I could add in the two file names, so sum.cbp and readme.md. So I could do that. I could do get add star, that'll add all of the files in my current directory. Or I could do get add dot, and that says recursively add everything in the current directory. So that would also get all of that. So I could do that. What I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to add sum.cbp. I'm not going to add readme because I want to show you how these look different. So we do get status. Okay, so I have the new file, sum.cbp. I've got readme.md down here. And what I want to do is show you that if I commit, if I did am here, I got to put in my log message here. What the A is going to do is it's going to, even though I haven't actually specified using the get add command that I want to modify, that I want to stage the changes to readme.md, this -a will automatically put those changes, commit those changes for me. So that's what the -a does. It doesn't do anything involving new files, but for existing files that have been tracked in earlier commits, it'll automatically add in those modifications to the commit. And then the -m does the same thing it did before. It just says that the following thing is the message for the log. So I'll say add it sum.cbp. Okay. Now if I do get status, everything's been committed. So there we go. And then let me do one last thing. Let's do get log, and you'll see that I have two separate log messages now. I've got the most recent one, which appears at the top, and then I have my initial one down here. Okay, so we will wrap it up with that, and then I'll look at a couple other things in the next video to show you different ways where you can add commit messages.